called rubbernecking, baby, but that's all right with me. Oh, they say that you're getting sound advice.
For decades, fans saw Elvis as a legend. But behind Graceland's glamorous gates, one forgotten maid saw the truth, haunting, eerie, and buried deep. Before her death, she revealed a secret so disturbing it was sealed in a letter. Until now, what she saw inside that locked room changes everything. The quiet woman behind the curtains of Graceland. Graceland in 1972 was a dazzling world, with crystal chandeliers, velvet curtains, golden wallpaper, and an endless rotation of famous faces. Behind it all, one woman moved silently through the chaos. Nancy Rook, a 72-year-old widow from Tupelo, Mississippi. She wasn't hired for fame or attention, just to clean. But over time, Nancy saw what the fans never did. She watched the king's mansion unravel from the inside. Nancy had raised 5 children and buried a husband before taking the Graceland job. She was quiet, polite, and respectful, which Elvis's manager wanted in staff. Her job started simply: dust the furniture, polish the mirrors, keep quiet. But soon, she began noticing things that didn't sit right. The Graceland Elvis fans knew was only half the truth. She described in her journal the eerie silence that blanketed certain parts of the house. Elvis often kept the upstairs closed to everyone except a few trusted aides. Even Nancy, despite years of work, never stepped foot there. She wrote that Elvis could go days without sleeping, walking the halls in his robe, sunglasses on, talking to shadows. At first, she assumed it was stress, but it felt like something darker. She once cleaned a guest room the day after a wild party and found crushed pills in the carpet and broken glass in the sink. There were bullet holes in at least 2 TVs, and no one seemed surprised. When Elvis wasn't performing, he was isolating. Nancy said she rarely saw him eat full meals, only small bites, candy bars, or nothing at all. The more time passed, the more erratic he became. But what set Nancy apart from others in the house was her habit of writing everything down. She kept a small black notebook, always hidden in her coat pocket. It wasn't gossip, it was survival. Writing helped her make sense of the chaos. And it's that notebook that gave us the most chilling parts of her story. In her entries, Nancy claimed Graceland had a presence, something unseen but always felt. The temperature in certain hallways dropped suddenly. Radios changed stations on their own. Mirrors cracked without explanation. Elvis, she said, believed something supernatural lived in the mansion with him. He even held late-night seances, trying to contact his mother, Gladys. Nancy once described finding candles melted into the carpet near a locked upstairs room. No one would tell her what happened, and she never asked again. But that night, she heard Elvis pacing for hours, talking loudly to no one. Her entry from that night ends with 5 words. "He's not alone up there." She never explained what she meant, but it wasn't the only time she hinted at something strange. According to her niece, who shared the journal years later, Nancy believed there was one room Elvis told everyone to avoid. Even the staff didn't clean it. It was always locked. The rumor was it had objects tied to his mother's memory: a rocking chair, old photos, a Bible she once read from. But Nancy was convinced it was more than a memorial. She wrote that the room moved at night. She often found the door slightly cracked in the mornings, even though she'd seen it locked the day before. One entry describes cold air pouring from the crack, even during Memphis's humid summer. She said the energy shifted when you stood near it, like the floor vibrated under your feet. It was the only place in Graceland she refused to pass alone, and it's still sealed to this day. Nancy also saw the impact all this had on Elvis himself. He'd drift between charm and paranoia, sometimes warm and funny, other times deeply anxious. She once noted he tore up a hotel room after dreaming someone close to him would betray him. He never named names, but Nancy believed he was haunted by more than just ghosts. Guilt, grief, and fame were all clawing at him at once. One new detail her niece revealed was that Nancy had written a sealed letter shortly before her death. It was addressed only to LC, possibly her niece's initials, and marked "not to be opened until after I'm gone." The contents were never made public directly, but a Reddit post with similar details appeared anonymously 2 years after her funeral. In it, the author claimed Elvis believed he was cursed, and that he once told Nancy something horrifying: "They want me dead, and it's not the fans." Nancy never tried to go public. She kept her secrets safe, hidden in those dusty pages. Her journal was passed down through her family, only surfacing decades later. But now, in the age of digital leaks, the truth is out. And what started as quiet notes from a cleaning lady might just change how we remember Elvis Presley forever. Nancy saw the pills, the paranoia, and something worse. Elvis believed his dead twin haunted the same upstairs bathroom. What she saw upstairs would haunt her forever. Nancy Rook kept to herself. She wasn't hired to ask questions, only to clean. But by the mid-70s, what she witnessed inside Graceland was more than dust and clutter. She noticed Elvis changing, not the superstar on stage, but the man pacing the halls in silence, surrounded by secrets. Upstairs was off-limits to most. Only trusted people were allowed beyond the landing, and Nancy was one of them. That's where things got darker. She described the air as heavy, the rooms eerily quiet one moment, then suddenly full of shouting or strange music. It wasn't just a home. It felt like something was trapped there. Elvis's dependency on prescription pills wasn't a hidden topic. Doctors and family later confirmed his long list of medications, but Nancy wrote that the deliveries came in plain brown bags, often at night. No labels, no instructions, just passed through a back door like contraband. She suspected there were more substances than people ever knew. She cleaned his bathroom many times. It was immaculate on the surface, but she noticed strange patterns. Mirrors covered in cloth, ashtrays full even when he hadn't smoked. There was a drawer he never let anyone touch, locked tight. She believed whatever was inside wasn't for medical use. Then came the sounds. Nancy described hearing loud thuds, groaning, even someone weeping behind doors that stayed locked all day. She couldn't identify who was inside, only that no one ever spoke of it. When she asked if Elvis was okay, she was told to mind her tasks. Over time, she stopped asking. What disturbed her most were the mirrors. Elvis would stare into them for long periods. Sometimes he talked quietly, like answering someone unseen. One night, she saw him standing there, completely still, eyes fixed on the glass. Later, he told his inner circle he'd seen Jessie, his twin, who died at birth. That moment stuck with her. Nancy didn't believe it was just grief. She said the energy in that room changed. Cold drafts with no open windows, lights flickering for no reason. She wondered if he was being haunted, not just mentally, but spiritually. Elvis had always been drawn to the supernatural. He read books on numerology and mysticism. He visited spiritual advisors and believed he was part of something cosmic. Nancy found books with markings and notes in the margins, even symbols she didn't recognize. She felt the mansion was being used for more than just music and rest. She remembered once cleaning a side table and finding a velvet pouch. Inside was a ring with a strange symbol, not a cross, but something older. There were also dried herbs and a scrap of parchment with numbers. She put it back and never mentioned it again. But she always suspected Elvis was searching for answers beyond this world. Other staff members whispered about the upstairs too. Some refused to go up there. One even quit suddenly after claiming they saw someone walk through a wall. Nancy dismissed it at first, until she experienced similar things herself. Doors she knew were closed would be wide open. She began to dread working past sunset. The mansion took on a different feel at night. Echoes where there were no people, shadows moving along the walls. It wasn't just her imagination. She wrote that she once felt someone breathing behind her, but no one was there. Nancy believed Elvis's mental state was tied to the house. As his health declined, the atmosphere in Graceland seemed to sink with him. He trusted few people, and those he did rarely stayed long. He grew paranoid, sometimes refusing to leave his room for days. She felt like the upstairs was a prison. The bathroom, where he eventually died, was already infamous to her. She called it a room of shadows, cold despite the heat, with strange marks on the walls that were scrubbed but always came back. She didn't know what caused them, but she sensed something and didn't want to leave. some stories Nancy never told aloud. But her journal hinted at deeper fears. She wrote that Elvis spoke of dreams where Jesse warned him of danger. He once said something was waiting for him in the mirror. She never forgot that line. Fans knew the music, the shows, the charisma, but Nancy saw the hidden side, the pain, the secrets, and the fear. She believed Elvis wasn't just struggling with fame, he was battling something darker. Whether real or imagined, it left a mark. Before she died, she told her niece that Graceland had a presence, something ancient, maybe tied to the land, or maybe born from Elvis's own spirit. Whatever it was, it didn't fade after his death. She warned her not to go upstairs, ever. And so we ask, was Elvis simply losing his grip, or did he open a door to something he couldn't close? Was Jesse just a figment of guilt, or was he calling his brother home? One thing is clear, what Nancy saw haunted her long after she left the mansion. The locked room. No one was allowed to enter. In Graceland, there was one door no one dared to open. Nancy Rook, the longtime maid, wrote in her journal that Elvis gave strict orders, stay away from the room at the end of the East Wing. It was always locked, even during parties or when family visited. The staff avoided it. Over time, that room became more of a myth than a place, a space surrounded by fear, secrecy, and questions. Nancy never got clear answers about what was inside, but her curiosity never faded. She described hearing a soft humming coming from behind the door, like someone playing music backward or chanting. One night, she passed by and noticed red light leaking out from the bottom crack. That same night, she saw a small table outside the room, with a burned matchstick and the smell of incense. Something strange was going on, and Nancy knew it had nothing to do with music. What finally pushed her to act came in late 1975. The door was ajar, and no one was around. She stepped closer, her journal said, holding her breath. Inside, she saw red curtains, a burning candle, and strange books spread on the floor. One title was written in Latin, and another had symbols she couldn't describe. She just called them Not for Human Eyes. Elvis had always been interested in odd things. He read books about ancient Egypt, numerology, and secret societies. Nancy noticed he had a pyramid necklace he wore during certain nights. She also spotted drawings of symbols similar to the Eye of Providence. To her, it looked like Elvis was chasing something beyond music and fame. Some fans claimed this room was where Elvis kept his most private items. Not just rare books or film reels, but things that showed how far he'd gone into hidden knowledge. A rumor online mentions a secret reel locked away, a personal video where Elvis seems to be talking to someone who isn't there. Not a phone call, but a full conversation with long pauses and sudden laughs, as if he could hear a voice. No one knows what was really on that tape, but the rumor is gaining attention. Some say it shows him whispering to a mirror, waiting for answers. Others believe it captures a moment of spiritual contact. A few even think it shows an early sign of schizophrenia. But whatever it is, the video has never been released to the public. Nancy wrote that the room's air felt heavy, like stepping into another world. She said she didn't feel alone there, even though no one else was present. One sentence from her journal stands out. That room wasn't haunted, it was waiting. The moment she saw what was inside, she never went back. More strange details came up in her writings. There was an old trunk beside the books, locked with a brass latch. Once, she saw Elvis carry in a painting wrapped in black cloth. When she asked about it, he just said, "It helps me sleep." Later, she spotted it in the hallway by mistake, a dark image of a staircase leading into clouds with no person in sight. The strangest thing was how Elvis acted after being in that room. Nancy said he seemed drained, like he'd run a marathon. His eyes looked glassy, and his hands would sometimes shake. Other days, he'd walk out smiling like he had just solved a puzzle. The room changed him, and not always in a good way. Speculation still surrounds the purpose of that space. Some believe it was a personal meditation room. Others say it was a shrine to his twin brother Jesse. A few even claim Elvis thought he could connect with spirits and gain power from the other side. It wasn't just sadness or trauma, it was like he was trying to reach somewhere else. The idea that Elvis was diving into esoteric rituals isn't far-fetched. He once spoke about reincarnation, his dreams, and the number 8 being tied to his fate. Friends close to him confirmed he kept strange objects in his bedroom, including ancient charms and crystals. The locked room may have been a part of his deeper obsession with the afterlife. It's this room that raises the most questions about who Elvis truly was behind the fame. Was he just a curious soul, looking for peace? Or was he seeking power, control, or maybe even a way to escape death itself? The real, if it exists, might hold the answers, or it might only deepen the mystery surrounding the king of rock and roll. Whatever was behind that door, Nancy believed it was never meant to be found. She called it Elvis's last secret. And now, with her gone, that room and everything inside it may be lost forever. Just days before Elvis died, Nancy claimed he drew strange symbols, spoke of watchers, and feared what was coming. What happened in the hours before Elvis died? In the final weeks of Elvis Presley's life, something changed inside Graceland. According to Nancy Rook, things started to feel colder. Not just the air, but the mood, the energy, the man himself. She noticed that Elvis barely came downstairs anymore. When he did, he was pale, quiet, and moving slowly like he was always listening for something. The staff whispered about how odd he had become, but no one dared say it out loud. Nancy remembered August of 1977 as more than just the month Elvis died. She called it the month Graceland went dark. Elvis began telling her strange things, warnings almost. He was convinced he was being watched. She once found him pacing alone by the stairs, writing something on the back of a magazine in sharp strokes, over and over. She kept her distance, but watched carefully. One morning, she walked past the staircase and saw something drawn in chalk on the wall near his room. It was a triangle with a strange eye in the center, a symbol she had never seen before. Next to it were pieces of notebook paper stuck to the wall. Scribbles filled the pages, but she could make out a few clear words. "Don't open the door. They're here." She didn't know what to make of it, but a pattern was forming. Elvis's sleep became more erratic, and the staff reported hearing him speaking to himself. At one point, a housekeeper told Nancy that she had passed his room and thought she heard multiple voices inside, but no one else was in there. The days dragged on, and Elvis seemed more like a ghost than a king. His famous laugh barely surfaced anymore. He walked in circles. He ate less. He sat in silence. Sometimes he stared out of the windows as if he was waiting for something or someone to arrive. Nancy claimed Elvis approached her once, only once, in those final days. He didn't look right. His eyes were wide, but empty. He said to her, "They're watching me. Don't let them open the door." Then he turned and walked away. She didn't ask questions. The night before Elvis died, things got even stranger. 2 black sedans reportedly pulled up to the back of Graceland around 2 a.m. Nancy saw them from the window near the kitchen. 2 men got out, wearing dark suits. They entered through a side door and stayed for nearly an hour. By the time the sun rose, they were gone. No one ever spoke of it. No names were given. Nancy said she never saw their faces, but she remembered that after they left, Elvis never came out of his room again. When Elvis was found dead the next day, panic filled the house. But Nancy noticed something subtle. Someone had removed several objects from Elvis's room before the ambulance arrived. A large book, a small black box, and several tapes were missing. She knew because she had dusted those items the week before. It was as if someone cleaned up after him before the public got a glimpse. She believed it wasn't random. Elvis had asked someone, maybe his closest circle, to remove these items in the event of his death. Maybe he expected it. Maybe he planned for it. What Nancy told her niece before passing away adds more layers to this mystery. She claimed that Elvis had made arrangements that no one ever revealed. He wanted his secrets buried with him. And some say the upstairs of Graceland still holds the answers. One theory is that Elvis believed he had a date with fate, that he was cursed by a spiritual path he had walked too far down. His interest in mysticism wasn't casual, it was deep, obsessive, and in those last weeks, it seemed like it had consumed him. People close to Elvis confirmed his interest in the afterlife, soul travel, and the metaphysical. but few knew how far he went. The notes Nancy described were strange and detailed. Some said, "The light calls me back," and "Cleanse before you cross." Whether those were lyrics or warnings, no one knows. Even more unsettling, Nancy believed someone knew Elvis would die before he did. She said she felt watched, followed, even years after leaving Graceland. It's possible Elvis wasn't alone in his fear. Others may have shared it or even fed it. Graceland was locked down after his death. No staff were allowed upstairs. Rooms were sealed. Some areas remained untouched for decades. Nancy always wondered what was being hidden. She never claimed to have all the answers, but she believed the truth wasn't as glamorous as fans wanted it to be. Behind the velvet ropes and gold records was a man who had descended into something dark and lonely. And whether Elvis saw his death coming or someone else made sure it happened, one thing is certain: Graceland held more than just music. It held secrets. Secrets that Nancy took with her, but left enough behind to keep us all wondering. 40 years later, a final confession claims Graceland was remodeled to bury the truth. Was Elvis rewriting history or protecting it? The letter that surfaces 40 years later. After 4 decades, a sealed letter emerged from inside an old Bible passed down through Nancy Rook's family. Her niece claimed it had been hidden in plain sight, beneath worn pages and dried flowers. The handwriting was shaky, but clear. It read, "Elvis had secrets bigger than fame, and if Graceland ever opens that room, the world will finally know." The letter shocked even those closest to Nancy. For years, she had been quiet about her time at Graceland, but this final message seemed to hint at something deeper, something she had held in for far too long, a truth not fit for the public back when Elvis was still worshipped like a god. She warned that Elvis feared someone would try to erase parts of his legacy, that people would twist his story to protect the image, but not the man. She believed he kept things hidden, not just out of paranoia, but to shield certain facts from being destroyed. According to the letter, Elvis told Nancy, in his own words, that the truth wasn't safe, that the world wasn't ready. Nancy hinted the room upstairs held more than old recordings or clothes. She described it as a place of intention, set up to preserve knowledge. She believed Elvis wanted to pass something on, but didn't trust anyone to receive it while he was alive. When he died, that trust vanished with him, and Graceland became a monument to half a story. What's most chilling is her statement that Graceland was remodeled more than once, possibly to remove evidence. Renovation records from the 1980s show sealed spaces, blocked stairways, and sudden design changes. It's unclear what was removed, but Nancy believed certain tapes and books disappeared without a trace. Some of them, she said, contained footage of Elvis speaking to a mirror and answering questions no one asked. The letter ended with a warning. Nancy wrote, "One day, someone will ask the right question. That's when the door will open. Just pray it doesn't happen too late." No further details were included, but that final line left many online wondering if she meant literal danger or a more spiritual consequence. There are whispers among die-hard Elvis researchers that an entire catalog of unreleased material once existed. Music, journals, maybe even dreams Elvis recorded late at night under heavy influence. If any of it survived, it could tell a new version of his life. One marked not just by fame, but obsession, fear, and control. Some believe Graceland's current owners are aware of this history, that they maintain the mystery on purpose, to keep the legend alive. Every year, thousands visit the mansion, but none go upstairs. That area remains sealed, out of respect, they say, or maybe out of necessity. Nancy's silence for decades showed deep loyalty. She never tried to profit, never sold her story. But her final letter wasn't about attention. It was about closure. It suggests that while Elvis lived behind cameras, he also lived inside a cage of secrets. A new theory has even surfaced online, suggesting that Elvis left behind a symbolic map inside his records. Hidden codes in the artwork of certain albums point to specific rooms inside Graceland. Nancy referenced one title in her letter, circled 3 times, Moody Blue. That album was his last. Was it a coincidence or a clue? Fans and skeptics alike are drawn to this idea, because if there's one thing people want more than fame, it's meaning. And if Elvis had something important to say in his final days, it might still be buried in that mansion. Nancy believed he wanted it that way, not for fame, but for truth. Nancy's letter raises more questions than it answers, but it reshapes how we see Elvis, not just as an icon, but as a man trying to preserve something bigger than music. Maybe he feared death, or maybe he feared being misunderstood. Whatever he was hiding, it was important enough for Nancy to carry the secret for 40 years. So we ask, was Elvis just a singer who got lost in his fame? Or was he a man chasing something deeper, something spiritual, dangerous, and hidden behind a locked door the world still hasn't opened? The king may be gone, but Graceland hasn't given up all its secrets. Decades after Elvis's death, the mansion still holds areas the public has never seen. That locked room, always off-limits, remains a symbol of unanswered questions. Some say it's just a room filled with personal items, but others believe it hides tapes, writings, or proof of beliefs Elvis never shared. It's not just a mystery. It's a part of pop culture history no one's ever fully unpacked. There's talk that the room contains items tied to secret societies or spiritual rituals. Nancy once claimed she saw Latin books, symbols, and candles, things far outside the life Elvis showed the world. One online theory says the room houses unseen footage of Elvis during his final days, speaking to someone no one else could see. If true, that could shift how we view his mental state, or reveal something more supernatural. Whatever's inside, Graceland's silence has only deepened the intrigue. The estate has changed over the years, with some areas remodeled or restricted. That raises questions. Were items removed, hidden, or destroyed to protect a certain image? Nancy's final warning pointed to a deliberate effort to keep certain truths buried. Was Elvis preparing for something the public wasn't supposed to know? Or was his decline too tragic to face in full? The truth is, Elvis was more than a rock star. He was a complex, haunted figure. He struggled with fame, identity, and fears he didn't always share. That locked room may hold more than memories. It could be the final chapter of a life we still don't fully understand. The king is gone, but the mysteries still echo in the walls of Graceland. So, what do you think? Is it time to open the door? Or should some history stay hidden forever? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Click on the next video popping up on your screen for more amazing content.